Well, tonight, let's get a sense of the thinking. Don't forget, the issues remain the same. And we're joined tonight by Mr. Anthony Ehilebo, who is head of IT of the People's Democratic Party. It's great to have you on the program tonight, and thank you for joining us. A lot of issues raised in that interview with Governor Badaru. Yes, a different time, but issues clearly remain the same. But before we get into it, one of the recent issues that came up is the announcement by someone who was actually in the PDP at some point, but moved into the APC, but now he says he's leaving the APC. I'm talking about Honorable Abdul Mumin Jibrin. And I'm wondering, within your party, are you welcoming him with open arms? Should he say, well, I'm coming back home?
Well, thank you very much, Femi Okikiola. It's nice being on your show. I'm speaking to you from the good town of Igwebe in Edo State. So I'm right at the heart of where people are. I'm feeling the pulse of our people at the grassroots level. As you must know, the PDP, in regards to the question you asked, has a very big umbrella. And should my dear friend Abdul Mumin Jibrin decide to come back home, the door is always open for him to come back to PDP. Of course, he has now realized what the whole of Nigeria now knows, that APC is one of the greatest frauds that has happened politically in the history of politics, not just in Africa. I was going to limit it to Africa, but worldwide, I'm sure there will be a case study of a party such as APC that has made promises and has broken the hearts of Nigerians. I tell you this, it's a situation where Nigerians are heartbroken because there was a lot of expectation from the promises of APC that we have now found out today cannot even be delivered. Femi, I don't know whether you buy petrol today. As of the time PDP left power, petrol was 19 naira to a litre. Today it is 165 naira. Sometimes where I am in Igwebe, it's almost 200 naira per litre or 220 on some good days. So I cannot for any reason understand. Well, he's an active participant. Your last interview, he's an active participant in bringing this misfortune on Nigeria. So I don't expect anything less than a defense of failure. But he must realize that Nigerians are now wise. Nigerians, and if you look at the number of registrations of new voters, you will see that Nigerians are eager to participate in ousting this failure we have suffered from APC that has brought untold hardship on Nigerians. I can tell you because I'm speaking from where people are feeling the pain the most, at the local grassroots level. The level of hunger, the level of despondence, the level of...
Well, it would seem that Mr. Ehilebo already entered into the arena of the fights, it would seem. Well, the question first, before we get into those issues, was about the, the defection, as it were, of Honorable Abdul Mumin Jibrin, and whether or not, the PDP, that's a party he was in before, was ready to receive him back. But we'll try to get that connection sorted, really. We understand that there might be issues with the connection, especially where he is, but not to worry. We'll get Mr. Anthony Ehilebo back on the program to get responses to some of the issues raised, especially the role of the young people in the polity in Nigeria. I mean, they make up nearly half of the voting population. So these and more we'll take on in a moment. So please don't go away. We promised to continue that conversation with Mr. Ehilebo of the People's Democratic Party, and, well, he's back. Well, so, Mr. Ehilebo, I know that there's that tendency naturally to respond to the APC word for word, but the question I asked first about Honorable Abdul Mumin Jibrin, I'd like you to respond to that first, then we can go on with a classic back and forth. So, what are your thoughts on that? Is the PDP ready to receive him with open arms? No, you're being unfair.
I mean, I'm just acting naturally. It's a natural response. And I've already told you that Honorable Abdul Mumin Jibrin is a dear friend of mine, even though he had sort of gone off the track and gone on to the APC and become something that I couldn't understand. But if he is coming back to the PDP, I'll be very glad that the umbrella is big enough to receive him. I hope that answer suffices to your question. Back to the issue, and the very pertinent issue of what we Nigerians are going through in terms of the economy, security, infrastructure, social mobilization that we lack as a country. I mean, we have an unprepared bunch of people in governance. that have no business managing a country as complex and as intricate as Nigeria. Look at our fault lines. Our fault lines have never been this divided, they have never been this intense, that you now have people looking at where exactly does the president come from now. Zoning has become a very important issue. You know, when you look at the political trend, it is often wise to consider why the people have gone towards this sort of agitation. Look at the IPOB situation in the Southeast. It's clearly out of hand. And as people have consistently tried to tell this government that they lack the capacity to fight wars on all fronts. But due to some inherent lack of appreciation of how delicate the issues are across the country, they have never listened to wise counsel. On this your show, several times, we have advised this government on how or what path to toe, be it in security. Remember how long it took for us to tell them to get rid of the service chiefs, that they were not doing anything. It took almost 4 years to get the president to change his service chiefs. We kept telling them that we didn't have an economic roadmap. From day one, that we expected that this government should have come up with an economic roadmap, an economic implementation team. It took them almost getting into their second term before they appointed a lame duck, if you ask me, economic policy team led by the great Salami. But you see, we are living the consequences of mass action without critical thinking. Because if you had looked at the persona of people that were vying, they were just interested in taking power. They didn't understand the complexities. You see, when people try to co-analyze PDP and APC, I often wonder that, do they understand the origins of both parties? Let me tell you, for instance, if you do not know, PDP was formed as a party. By then, the G9, G34, and G39, prominent Nigerians, which included Adamu Chiroma, which included people like Professor Denro, who is now in APC, in SDP, fundamental people who thought that they needed to take power from the military and give it back to the civilians. Maybe somewhere along the line we got carried away and forgot, because I, at that point, realized that PDP will go to rallies and say PDP and they'll say power. And we, post 2015, we went into a phase to try and reconnect back to the people. That's why you go to any PDP meeting and they say PDP, they'll say power to the people. They realize that we need to take power and give it back to the people. And in saying this, I don't think I have seen the APC go through a process of reform. This is a party that hurriedly put together its NWC that is going into an election less than a month to general election. Who does that?
I appreciate perhaps some of the historical perspectives and the state of the nation at this time, if you can hear me. But I'd also like to speak to some of the solutions that your party is bringing on board, specifically maybe you, because you also represent a huge bloc, the young people who, I mean, it's always been said they are the leaders of today, no more tomorrow. So I wonder, merit of challenges, one of them you talked about is this whole ensuring that people feel among, as it were. Is it restructuring, ensuring that there's equal development, as it were? So for you, a representative of young people, as it were, in the opposition People's Democratic Party, what are the solutions that you're bringing on board to solve these issues?
Thank you very much, Femi. As a young person in PDP, part of the solutions was to broaden the base of the governance selection basket, bring in more young people who are capable, who have the energy and the vibrancy into governance positions. We have pursued this effectively by mandating a few young people to run for offices. I, for instance, am running for the State House of Assembly, Igwebe State Constituency in Edo State. And so many other young people across the country. Austin Oka is running for House of Rep in Kogi State, all from the PDP stock. And these are people who have, over the years, served PDP. And PDP is poised to bring in new blood into the political governance pool that we have. And that tells you the innovation we are bringing to governance. I mean, some of us are captains in our industry. I mean, I've run the PDP Media Directorate for the last 5 years. And I can tell you it has been one of the most robust directorates with engagements across board. And I also run multi-entrepreneurial engagements, which gives me the knowledge base to know what people need. And I'm also a social activist. So I also know that there's a level of expectation of proper and well-rounded governance engagement that the people expect from me. So I can tell you that if you are looking at the future and looking at best laid plans to change the course Nigeria has currently found itself in perdition, we are better equipped, better trained, better skilled. We are coming from a party with purpose. Don't forget, I tried to give you an analogy of PDP and APC so that you understand what we are bringing to the table. Is that PDP is the only party right now framed to deliver good governance to Nigerians. Look at the governors that are performing today in Nigeria.
Mr. Ihilebo, again, I appreciate that, but in specifics, I'm talking about the ideas. I understand, I mean, the urge to speak positively about your party. Clearly, I mean, that's the whole idea, but specific ideas. So I'll give you an example, maybe to make it perhaps simpler. There's been this proposal to have some sort of a pause before elections, ensure that there is a setup that gives us a new constitution or something that essentially brings that togetherness. So in terms of ideas and solutions to these issues, which we seem to talk about every day, what is the thinking within the PDP?
Okay, I gave you an apt response to your question, and maybe you need to listen to it again. PDP is broadening the base of bringing in a pool of people that have the requisite knowledge to alter the course of the destiny of this country. Listen again. There are young people who are lawyers, who are skilled at legal drafting, constitutional, because you have to understand that we are coming in to fix problems. So you need, first of all, your capital base, the human capital base that is going to bring what you need. The pause before election, what does that mean? We're talking about people that were instrumental to the draft, the passage of the Electoral Act that is going to be used to conduct elections. People that understand the nitty-gritty of the legal frameworks that need to be put in place. People that understand that some states have not domesticated the Child Rights Act, have not worked on bills that enable the opening up of society. For instance, I can tell you that Edo State has Osisi. I'm going to explain how it applies to a new Nigeria that you want to see, or a renewed Nigeria, or a rescued Nigeria, according to what PDP has. Now, some of us understand that legal framework aids in better governance. That is what PDP is doing. Look at the way it has brought in a 25-year-old national youth leader to energize its base, to bring in more young people, to make the party look friendly to young people, because that's the base. That's where most of the voting population, most of the population affected by poverty is. First of all, bring them onto the party. Get programs. The party is developing. You know, PDP is a capitalist-driven. It seeks to create small and medium-scale industries. Unlike what, I have to really go back to both parties, because the ideology of both parties leads to the kind of governance you will get and will lead to the kind of results in terms of a state and a society that functions that you want. So, Femi, when you're asking me what does PDP propose, PDP is acting it out. You talked about in your introduction the cost of engaging in politics, the cost of the forms. Compare the cost of PDP forms for young people to that of APC, which was, for instance, for State House of Assembly. For young people and women under 30, PDP was given a 50% price on 600,000, which was the total cost of the form, which meant it was 300,000, as compared to 600,000, 2 million for APC, for House of Assembly. For House of Rep, it was 5 million and 10 million, whereas PDP was doing 2.5 million, making the entry into that pool where you can select the right leadership. Because ask anybody the problem of Nigeria, they'll tell you Nigeria doesn't have a problem of the kind of resources it needs. It just has a leadership problem. So the first solution, again, back to your question, Femi, so that you have a clear answer to what I'm giving you. We are diagnosing the problem of Nigeria as a leadership problem, which means a capital, your human capital is deficient. So PDP is introducing a lot of young people who have shown that they have capacity to manage themselves. Look at someone like Banky W, for instance. He's running in Lagos.
Right.
Banky W has built an entertainment industry, EMB, to a standard that PDP is proud to ask that kind of person, come and run on our platform, because you know you will deliver good governance.
Right. Well, Mr. Ihilebo,
does that answer your question, Femi?
Well, there's also another protracted challenge we're having in this conversation. It's the fact that you keep calling me Femi. The name is Coyote, but it's okay.
Okay, sorry, Coyote.
I understand. Maybe I'll consider adding that to my names.
Yeah,
but I'd like to thank you so much, Mr. Anthony Ihilebo, who is the head of IT. Don't worry, you're forgiven. Thank you so much for your time.
Head of new media,
and for speaking for young people,
media.
I think it's important really to get young people to have a voice in this, political process. Thank you so much for your time.